fence off an area under the trees, and with this fence behind it on this side, but this side over here will not. The fence is pretty far away. So we're just going to make sure that the strands of electric wire are really low. Okay, so we have our step-in posts put in. I made sure that they are right to the ground. We're going to be running wire on the bottom-most rungs, and they go through the trees, so they'll have some shade and a little bit of grass, and their space just the same as these wooden posts, and right tight to the corners so they can't fit through any gaps. And I'm going to use this big wire. You can use thinner wire. This wire is what we have our big pigs in, and it does work, but I find this bigger wire actually, I don't know if it's a visual, but all animals seem to respond better to it, even my sheep. So that's one continuous strand. It's better to have one continuous than multiple pieces tied together. This is our energizer or fence charger. It's always plugged in. We'll just run an extension cord out to it. It does pack a punch, so they will learn to stay away from the wire quite quickly. And I just use this smaller wire because the large white wire is too thick to hook up into these connectors. So the positive wire goes into the red, and I'll wind that around, hook it up, and then the other end will wrap around the wire a bunch of times to make sure that it's conducting the electricity well. We'll run a second one of these smaller wires, run it to this metal rod, and that will be our ground. I've staked out all the stakes for them, just a small enclosure to start. And we have fence on this side behind the wire. I'm using the lowest setting because these guys are pretty new. I think they're just 6 or 7 weeks. So now that I've gone around once, I'm just going to go to the next rung up. And I think 2 strands for these piglets is going to be just fine. When running a continuous wire, I like to make sure that this first wire is nice and tight all the way around. And it does look like it's pretty good. So I'm just going to wrap it around this same rung one more time just to keep that line tight before we go up into the second one. So I've strung all the electric wire. I actually opted to do more than just the bottom 2 strands, even though that's all that I really would need. I just didn't want to cut this big length of electric wire so I can extend their pen later on. Here I have wrapped this lead wire around the main strand multiple times, and then I just tied it. and it is going to go up inside the shelter. These fence chargers are not supposed to be outside, so we just keep it inside. So this end will wrap around tightly. We'll screw that on. Then I'm going to get the negative and do the same with the negative wire and run it to the ground rod. Any piece of rebar or large piece of metal that you can sink into the ground fairly deep, I'd say about 6 to 12 inches deep. The deeper the better. That'll give you a nice ground and a good jolt. Now that the charger is hooked up, we've hooked up our ground and our positive to the main line, and I've gone around making sure that all the wires, especially this bottom wire, is pushed all the way down, because these slots, sometimes they want to move up, but these piglets are pretty small, so I need to make sure that the line is always at nose height for when we're training them, because I'll always go to sniff it first just to investigate what it is, and they'll learn very quickly. The other thing that's really important is that these piglets have been here for a couple days. They know where home is. If you get brand new piglets and they don't know where home is supposed to be, or they don't have a place where they run to and they feel safe, if they do get out, then they're gone. They don't know where to go. So these guys have been here at least 48 hours, and they've not come outside of this shelter room, and we have it completely enclosed. Hi guys. Hi. They're still pretty cautious, but we're gonna turn this fence on and let them come outside and explore. The charger is now plugged in, and you can hear it clicking. It kind of sounds like it might be shorting out somewhere. So let's go outside and have a check and see if we can hear any snapping along the line. It should sound a bit more loud and hollow. So it's shorting out on this grass, and I have pulled it away from the grass for the most part over on the other side, but we'll fix it up before we open up the door. You can hear it's a little bit louder now. There might be a few pieces of grass that it's struggling with a little bit, but I pulled out that big clump, and I'm confident that this is charged pretty good. Everything's hooked up. All the grass is off the wires all the way around. Oh, get out of it. And that right there is why you want to have a fence behind it. I only have a fence on one side, so let's cross our fingers. So I'm just going to back up and out of the way. So, oh shit. Oh, and they ran through it. Now that we've seen the importance of having a backer fence behind the electric wire, I've put up 3 of my movable stucco wire panels that we have actually for lambing pens. So I've just tied these together, And they're fairly heavy for these little piglets. I don't think that they're going to be able to move them. So let's try again. I would say that is a success.